Well, Vivek Ramaswamy no longer the yin to Elon Musk's yang. During a sit-down with the Breakfast Club on Tuesday, the former co-chief of the Department of Government Efficiency asserted that his exit from DOGE was amicable, a defense that Charlamagne Tha God quickly took issue with. Let's take a listen.
You think you were pushed out of DOGE because Trump rolled back the DEI initiatives?
No, to the contrary. And, I would say, just to be super clear about it, I have no problem with, framing or whatever. Mm-hmm. It was really just an actual mutual decision where you look at, here was one vision on approach. Here's a different vision on an approach. That's great. There's no right or wrong answer.
I hear you, Vivek. I don't believe you.
Oh, that's fair enough.
I think you either got pushed out or you know that it's going to implode. I think that Elon is going to crash and burn it, and you're a smart guy, and you said, you know what? Let me get out of Dodge and go do my governor of Ohio thing.
Ramaswamy was supposed to help lead the new group tasked with shrinking government bloat, but his stint was almost dead on arrival. Here's more from the man himself.
One of my core areas of focus throughout has been the constitutional and legal basis for shutting down the bureaucracy and the federal government and downsizing it. That's what I focused, written my books on, et cetera. It evolved in more of a direction of a technology project, using a technology-first approach. And so Elon and I were on good terms. We have a good personal relationship, slightly different approaches to the project. And what he and I both concluded, and I think this is right, is given my focus on law, on legislation, the right way to realize my vision is through elected office. And
the biotech entrepreneur is expected to make a run for the Ohio governorship. The Hill has reported that he tapped Vice President J.D. Vance's top political advisors ahead of an announcement in that regard. So, Vivek says it was a friendly parting of the ways, differences in strategy between him and Elon, and he's more
musical differences have broken up the band here, right?
I guess
it's all
so.
Very innocent sounding.
Who knows what the real story is? That could very well be the real story, that it was kind of weird to have two people in charge of this anyway. It's the Department of Government Efficiency. Do we need to have two people in charge of it?
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. And it was also two people who have pretty strong personalities and I would say a pretty strong desire for the spotlight in and of themselves. There has certainly been some reporting that there were tensions within that arrangement. Elon Musk, who we have discussed numerous times before, is obviously still in the center of the Trump world. Vivek Ramaswamy, to my mind, appears to have lost some sort of battle for influence. I think he did, to be fair, implicitly acknowledge that when he said the thing to Charlamagne about the two different approaches. His argument, I think, is that Musk favors a technology-driven kind of data analytics approach to it. I'm not exactly sure what Ramaswamy means when he talks about a constitutional approach or a legislative approach. Perhaps he meant, I don't know, driving legislation through Congress that would get rid of certain departments. That seems to be what he's suggesting there. Obviously, a difference in those two approaches.
If that approach has been sidelined, it's a shame, because to make cuts to government spending permanent and robust, it can't just be by executive fiat. It needs to make its way through legislation. And there's a remarkable opportunity, an unprecedented opportunity, an opportunity that might never present itself again to do just that, with Republicans controlling right now all three branches of government and having a mostly supportive Supreme Court. So please do something. So I hope Vivek was not sidelined for that reason. I would remind everyone that for the most, ideologically, Vivek and Elon have been more on the same side. They were very famously on the same side of the H-1B visa fight, for which they both took a lot of flack from the more populist MAGA wing. Steve Bannon called for Elon Musk to be thrown out of the Trump coalition. Vivek did fall pretty unusually silent after his own tweet about the immigration situation, where he likened it to, Americans aren't idolizing nerds, and he made like a Saved by the Bell reference. You remember that whole thread? Yeah. Between that and the New York Magazine, I tweeted this yesterday, cover of the pro-Trump celebrators, and how it's like they're the mean kids in high school. Everyone seems is projecting their own high school experience onto the national political situation in a very weird way to me. But Vivek got a lot of blowback from that, so I don't know if that led to his, just because it was not a metaphor that people really appreciate. I agree with Vivek on policy substantively pretty much down the line. I did not agree with how he framed that exact argument, because American innovation and entrepreneurship and success it takes a mixture of personalities. The nerd, but also the jock, the charismatic figure, the leader. It's not just all technical skills for which certain immigrant communities who come here are known for. That is a very important ingredient in our success, but we can't all just be computer science obsessed automatons. We need leadership and vision and all that kind of stuff too.
Well, absolutely, but also the way in which that message was delivered had a very obvious and ostentatious sort of wag of the finger to it, and I don't think that tends to go down terribly well with people. The H-1B visa argument was certainly an interesting argument because it pitted Vivek and Elon and those kind of people against.
And they won. They got Trump to pretend he was in favor of the policy all along.
They did, which he obviously was not and had stated that he was not. And so they did prevail on that occasion, despite the fact that Steve Bannon is still talking about how he's going to, in some way get retribution's perhaps too strong a word, but he believes that he can ultimately drive out those oligarchic forces and restore MAGA to its working
Not on
class,
my
right?
watch.
I know that you're big in favour of the oligarchs. I know. And speaking of which, I mean, I'm obviously much less enthusiastic than you are about the cutting of government spending. Generally, Elon has this goal that he had said in the past of $2 trillion being cut from government spending. I think that would hollow out services that are important. I think that if Trump goes ahead with this full-bore agenda, what is going to happen is that people will be reminded in very forcible terms that there are things that the government does that are useful and necessary, and that if they are stopped from doing it, whether that is Medicaid or whether that is a whole measure of government actions, that they will, Veterans Affairs, all kinds of things that could be negatively affected. We'll see how that works out.
I mean, maybe, but this is what Elon does. He comes in and makes companies more efficient. I mean, he bought Twitter. He fired 80% of the workforce, and I know there's a lot of people who don't like the way it is now, but that has to do with the content moderation decisions being made. The site still operates perfectly well with an 80% reduction in the workforce. I don't know, man.
But the point is, I think, and it's interesting you use the word company. My argument, and I think a lot, people who have a different view would say the government isn't a company. The government, by its nature, has to do things or should do things that are unprofitable, but socially necessary. That's different from a private or publicly listed company where the profit motive is the animating force.
Well, I think that's true to an extent, although the profit motive can be an important driver in delivering just in competition to provide service. Not all goods and services, things we need, are provided publicly or provided by the government, and there's obviously robust markets in providing people's food and clothing and all sorts of other things. I tend to think government, you're right, it's not perfect because it still costs something, and there's some people who can't even afford what it costs in robust and competitive markets. And so you have, maybe my view of government is for emergency situations or things where you don't want competition in providing the service, like policing and military benefits, the actual ostensible purpose of government, kind of in our philosophical John Locke-esque understanding of what it does. But I don't know. I think some efficiencies could be introduced in terms of it being a provider of services, some of which are also provided privately and more efficiently and more cheaply and better. Let's try to make it more like that.
I think we need a social safety net. I think that social safety net in this country is very, very fragile and flimsy as it is, to the great detriment of a lot of citizens, particularly lower income citizens. And I think government has a very important role to play there, Robby.
All right, coming up is MLK Jr. Day in jeopardy. We will discuss that. Stay with us.